It's just after I see a movie, I like to go get a piece of pie and talk about it. It's sort of a little tradition I have. Do you like to get pie after you see a good movie?
I'm Brian.
Hey, I'm James.
I'm Kyle.
And welcome to A Piece of Pie. It's a movie podcast with a queer perspective. Every week, we're going to tackle a movie, sometimes new, sometimes old, sometimes both. We're just going to watch the movie and talk about it. The title, A Piece of Pie, comes from a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's a true romance starring Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette. In the movie, Patricia Arquette and Christian Slater meet at a movie theater. After the movie, Patricia Arquette asks him, "Do you want to get a slice of pie? Every time I see a movie, I like to get a slice of pie and talk about it." So that's what we're going to do. We're going to see a movie. We're going to talk about it. We hope you like it. We hope you listen and subscribe. But most of all, we hope you enjoy it. For the first episode, I just wanted to kind of get together and talk about the Oscars. The Oscars were last night, the 2018 90th Oscars. The Shape of Water was the best picture. The entire ceremony kind of felt to me like they were checking off boxes.
I think it was the most disappointing Oscars I've ever watched.
Really?
Not in terms of being not disagreeing the most with it, just in terms of this was for me my favorite year of movies since I've started caring about movies.
Mm-hmm.
And just every Oscar went to the person you thought it was going to go to. Every single one. There wasn't one surprise the entire night. I'm not even asking for a surprise I'm happy about. It was just so unremarkable. Everything that happened was so unremarkable.
I think that in the last few years, with the rise of social media and the rise of multiple award shows, by the time the Oscars are the last one, so by the time you get to the Oscars, you've had the Producers Guild, the Directors Guild, the Screen Actors Guild, you've had the Golden Globes.
The Independent Spirit Awards.
You've had the Independent Spirit Awards. You've had all of the major awards. So by the time... This has been true. I agree with you, but I've also felt that the last few years where it's just I've just known every year going in who's going to win.
Moonlight was a surprise?
Moonlight was a surprise. Mark
it was
in
a
more ways
surprise.
than one.
Yeah, it was a surprise to everyone who was standing on that stage.
Right,
exactly. Mark Rylance, I think, was a surprise when it
Yes.
happened. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Especially Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you can... That's great. I'm glad he didn't win.
Me too.
He has an Oscar. It's fine.
Yeah.
Although last night was interesting.
I felt really vindicated. I literally jumped off of the couch with excitement that Roger Deakins finally won his fucking
That's ridiculous.
Oscar.
It's his first one.
Yeah.
14 years.
And that's what...
Blade Runner was fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad he won it for that, but he
Yeah.
should have won it for most of the films that he
Any Coen Brothers movie that he shot.
Right.
Yeah,
Skyfall,
absolutely.
even.
Skyfall.
was stunning.
Yeah. That's what I mean, though, when I say it felt like it was checking off boxes, because it was let's give Roger Deakins one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give Allison Janney one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give Gary Oldman one.
Mm-hmm. I think all 4 acting awards were legacy awards. Even Sam Rockwell, because I know he's a young man, but if you pay attention to movies, you've known who he is, and that he's a good actor for 20 years.
Yeah, he should have won that Oscar 10, 15 years ago, however long ago it was, for Matchstick Men, which was kind of the first movie that I saw where I was like, who is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Or for his performance in Moon.
Moon too, yeah. That was a great movie.
And Brian, you and I talked about this before too. When we were talking about him specifically, we went to go see 3 Billboards together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, of all of the supporting performances this year, I don't think he even deserved a nomination. There were a lot of other better performances that were out there that
got completely snubbed. Off the top of my head, Michael Stuhlbarg or Armie Hammer.
And even Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart in Logan was very, very good. That Logan even got its writing nomination. Feels like...
adapted,
Yeah. That kind of felt like a surprise. I know early in the year, I know there was a lot of kind of talk about it. I also remember reading over the summer, when Wonder Woman was out, people were like, will Wonder Woman be nominated for Best Picture? And at the time, I remember thinking, if there's going to be a comic book movie for Best Picture, it should be Logan.
Absolutely. But I also think that, we're talking about checking off boxes. I was sort of surprised when the nominations came out that Patty Jenkins didn't get a nomination. I thought, if anything about that movie was going to get a nomination, it would have gone to her for a lot of reasons, for, the rise of the Me Too movement and all this talk, that's happening. And I think we definitely saw some elements of that. Just look at the performances that happened at the Oscars. A lot, not that I'm saying that some of these people didn't deserve the Oscars that they got, but it felt like, the Oscars is showing their commitment to diversity in a way that, they've only talked about in the past. They did this whole new initiative. I still don't think it went far enough.
For
it's
all of
gonna
that-
not go far enough, but
Yeah. For all of that, there were still an awful lot of old white guys on stage.
well, the Academy is still overwhelmingly old white guys.
Yeah.
The fact that
Jordan Peele winning, I thought was fantastic.
that was huge. A fantastic woman winning for best
Yeah,
foreign and having
yeah.
Daniela Vega
Yeah.
on that stage
Yeah.
was amazing. Like that made me choke up just seeing her up there, and that they finally gave her a platform. When you look, just what was it, 2-3 years ago, Tangerine.
Yeah.
And, Maya, I'm blanking on her last name, won the Independent Spirit Award. She was the first trans actress to win a major acting award. And she didn't get nominated. The film, I don't even think the film got nominated for a single
Did
thing.
you get any nominations? Tangerine, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tangerine was an incredible film. And so
Yeah.
much of that was about the fact that the two black trans actresses that led that film were able to rewrite a lot of their sections, to rework a lot of their sections.
It was shot mostly like on the fly, like improv, right?
Yeah,
On an
and-
iPhone. I know that.
Yeah, and Sean Baker specifically said, when he found his leads for this film, he was like, "This is not my experience. This is your experience. I want you to write this. This is real and honest to you. It's not for like a white man who's not trans to be writing this."
Yeah. I hadn't heard that, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I have yet to see The Florida Project, which was his
I
follow-up.
haven't seen it either.
Okay, so none of us have seen Florida Project. Full
Willem
disclosure.
Dafoe is another, he's
I have-
another under-rewarded actor.
I have a feeling if I see that movie, I'm going to be mad that he didn't win.
Yeah,
Yes.
one of my good friends basically was like, that should have been nominated over The Post and or Darkest Hour.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sight unseen, I would believe that. This was the first year for me in a long time, probably at least since they expanded the Best Picture categories, where I had seen every movie.
Mhm.
So that was just fun, just to be able to do that and kind of have that opinion was fun for me. So I also kind of felt like with those 9 movies, the 9 movies that they nominated, The Shape of Water would have been like my 4th choice to win.
I would say fifth or sixth for me. 6th, actually.
I mean, I'm sure if I like wrote them all down and like,
yeah.
I would, yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. I think it's going to be like it's it's not going to go down in history as like a Crash or a how the
Right.
fuck did this
Oh,
win.
no.
But I think it's going to go in that category of like Forrest Gump, American Beauty. Like, yeah, this is a good movie, but there were a lot of better movies that year.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
such a great year for movies that was what I was saying. I saw 9 movies. There was 5 or 6 of them that if they had won, I would have been like, well, okay.
Yeah, there were 4.
There was
or 5,
only
yeah.
2 that I was actively like, I don't want this to win.
Yeah, me too.
3, excuse me. I had 3 where I just didn't want them to win, and that was 3 Billboards,
Yep.
Darkest Hour,
Yep.
and The Post.
Oh, yes,
And
3. Yeah.
None of them even. I was about to say none of them are even that bad. The Post is the closest to being bad. I know, Kyle.
It's my least favorite movie of the year.
Yeah. Well, that's because you didn't see Justice League.
That's true, I did.
If you had seen Justice League, you would have a very different.
Oh, you know
Worst
what?
movie
Actually,
of the
I did see Alien Covenant. That's pretty fucking terrible.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that might be the worst movie I saw last
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Again, you didn't see Justice League.
I
I saw Justice League. I saw Dark Tower. Those
boy.
would be the bottom 2 for sure. And next to those 2 movies, Alien Covenant at least is Ridley Scott. At least it looks beautiful.
And it
on my
has one
TV.
great performance on it.
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah,
yeah.
he's great.
Speaking of the Oscars and Michael Fassbender, Michael Fassbender, I feel like is an actor that
Needs an Oscar.
needs an Oscar.
Yeah.
Should get an Oscar. I almost want to say he should have gotten it for Inglourious Bastards, but then you lose. Then he wins over Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
And Christoph Waltz.
That
deserves
was-
Oscar as well.
yeah.
Honestly, the one he probably deserved it the most for was when he didn't get was Shame, which he wasn't even nominated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't actually seen that. So.
Yeah.
I would say
Well,
either of his first 2 Steve McQueen films, like
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Hunger.
Shame
Holy
and Hunger, like both
Yeah.
of them,
Or
were
even
incredible.
supporting for 12 years.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I mean, he was
Except he lost.
vicious in that film.
Whoever won that year was like, I don't remember who it was, but it was like a very obvious. I gotta look that up. Whoever he lost to was like, oh yeah, that person is
like a Gary Oldman style
definitely-
kind of.
No, but it was like he's definitely going to, and he should.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Those are always
Stand by.
nice.
No, but-
Okay. Well, while he's doing that, let's move on to the acting categories. Best actress, of course, went to Frances McDormand.
And her incredible "maybe I took a bunch of drugs" speech.
Yeah, she was. I mean,
It was coherent.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
There was so much like physical movement in it that I'm like,
I think she's kind of just like that.
maybe
Yeah.
I just haven't seen her, give enough interviews, and that's not a knock. I'm not saying that is
sure.
like, oh, I think she's drug addled and
Yeah,
whatever. I don't mean that in that
we've all done drugs. It's
Yeah, right. I mean, she literally said, "I've got something to say. I've got a lot to say."
Yeah.
And
And I love when
She
she
said
like
it,
put
that was
the
great.
he's got the answer.
I take it back. This person did not deserve it.
Oh,
It was
okay.
Jared Leto.
oh,
He
no.
lost that to Jared Leto. I take that back.
Yeah, he wasn't not. Michael Fassbender's never been nominated, has he?
No, he was nominated for 12 Years a Slave. He was
Oh.
nominated for Steve Jobs.
that's right.
Oh,
There might be a
that's
third
right.
one, actually. I don't
Steve
He
know.
didn't
Jobs.
get
He
nominated.
did not deserve it for Steve Jobs.
Well, I didn't like that movie.
Yeah, I
He's
love that
very good.
I just didn't like his American accent. It was
You and the accents. Oh my god.
Yeah,
This is going to be a running theme on this podcast.
that's fine. That's fine. I have a
Mike, yeah. Brian is a little more perturbed by a bad accent than I am. Which is fair.
You know who did not have a bad accent is Daniel Kaluuya in
Very,
Out.
very true.
Oh, I know. He was
Flawless.
incredible.
I didn't
Flawless
know he was
accent.
British until well after
I
I
did
saw
not
the
know.
movie.
I didn't either.
But we're on Best Actress. Let's go back to Best Actress. So Frances McDormand, a national treasure,
Yes, she is.
Amazing.
has an Oscar. Is the best part of an otherwise problematic movie.
Yes.
Not necessarily the best actress, in my opinion, of the year. I would have loved for Greta Gerwig to get that. I would have loved.
You mean
Saoirse
Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You know, I have to say, when they played, now I'm less attuned to this than you are, but when they played her clip, I don't remember which scene it was, when they played her clip, and
Oh, it was the accent.
for the record, Lady Bird, my favorite film of the year, but when they played that clip, I was like, ooh, she sounds real Irish.
Yeah.
Like, whatever clip they chose, she sounds
It was when
really
she
Irish.
was. It's
For
when she's.
Sacramento.
It's when
Yeah.
she's confronting Laurie Metcalf, and she
I'm
like
like,
starts
I'm
yelling
going to
and
get really rich and I'm
Yeah.
going to make a lot of money.
And it's
just-
when she's like, tell me a number, like tell me how much it's cost you, or
Yeah.
whatever the whole thing is, and she throws the paper down. It's a great scene and a
Yeah,
great
it's
movie.
incredible.
And it's a great
Um,
performance. She's
yeah.
wonderful in it.
Yeah.
But
So who else was Best Actress? Sally Hawkins.
So,
I thought.
you know what? I was hoping it would go to Sally Hawkins because for me that was the most like intensely heartbreaking
Yeah.
thing. And like, for somebody who chairs a diversity committee, I was immediately kind of up in arms that you didn't actually have a deaf or mute person playing that role.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, this is like, it's not whitewashing, but it is like taking somebody who doesn't live with a disability and putting
That's
them in this
Yeah.
like role that's gonna probably win them a nomination and possibly
right.
an award. But her role, I mean, the thing I love about that movie in general is that it has so much heart and soul
Yeah.
for people who are outsiders, but her performances and the clip that they showed, in her reel for the award,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is like such a heartbreaking moment in that movie.
That's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's
What was the scene?
incredible.
It's the scene where she is explaining to Richard Jenkins, like,
And she's forcing him
Mm.
to repeat out loud,
yeah,
so that he can hear himself say
yeah.
what she's, describing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
To be fair, a deaf woman has won Best Actress before,
That's true.
so
Marley
there
Matlin.
is that.
I haven't seen that movie. What was
It's
Children of a Lesser
Children
God?
of a Lesser God.
I've not seen
I
it.
haven't seen it.
It's not great, but she's very very good in it. Like
Yeah.
it's a deserved award.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Tanya Harding. I'm sorry, Margot Robbie
Margot
as Tanya
Robbie.
Harding.
No,
Margot Robbie as
I-
Tanya Harding.
I really think
I think that was your favorite of the year, right?
It would have been a tie between her and Sally Hawkins. I think I, Tonya is at best a B plus movie, but in the last 15 minutes, she just that was those
that scene,
last two
her
scenes.
Oscar clip, yeah.
her
I
Oscar
would rather
clip,
go to jail
yeah.
and be able to skate than not be able to skate.
She is unbelievable in that
Absolutely.
scene, and the scene right before it, the mirror scene that they use in the trailer so much of her putting on her.
Yeah.
She knocked both of those scenes out of the park, and they were both really, really hard to pull off.
Yeah.
I would say actually,
Also another good accent.
yes.
Yes.
I feel like it's easier for Australians than it is for English people. I don't
Yeah,
know
because
why.
Nicole Kidman, too,
Yeah, she's always
often
fine.
has a really good
Yeah.
American
They
accent.
followed the Kate Blanchett school.
Yeah, and she's always like, I feel like in Blue Jasmine she's
yeah.
really.
But Cate Blanchett's also like somebody who becomes whatever character she's playing.
Totally, yeah.
I mean, her portrayal of Katharine Hepburn is like free.
Yeah.
I will say my favorite lead female performance of the year was not nominated, which was Vicky Creeps in Phantom Thread.
Oh,
Yeah.
That, even more than Daniel Day-Lewis for me, that performance made the movie, and it's because when you get to the end of the movie and you realize who she is, you're like, oh, she's been playing this the whole time. Like, she's been this character the whole time. And when you look back on the movie, for me, that performance just grows the more I think about it, and I'm more impressed with it the more I think about it. And I hope she does more stuff, because I thought she was fantastic.
Yeah, she was fantastic. You're right.
When we were talking about that movie after we saw it, sort of like unpacking that, I think I was telling you, like...
Wait, which movie?
Phantom Thread.
Okay.
But I was sort of like, I have a very, at this point in the year, and after everything's been happening the last 2 years, I have a very low threshold for being able to, like, roll with things that are deeply misogynist.
Sure.
And so I was, like, really having a hard time getting through this film, and then the twist at the end happens, and you start to think back on all of these scenes, especially with her and Leslie Manville,
Yeah.
together in the room, where you just assume that they're adversaries for so much of the movie, and they are for a period, but at some point it really flips the script entirely.
Yeah.
And that is amazing. Like, that, the impact of that, because the film appears so clearly one way, just, like, killed it and knocked it out of the park at the end.
Totally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's one of those movies. I've only seen it the once, but I'm
too.
looking forward to seeing it again.
Me too.
I've already pre-ordered it on iTunes. I don't know when it's coming out, but I will definitely be
Apple,
watching it
please
again.
give us money.
Right.
But like, you do want to see it again, because in more ways than in so many ways, the last 10 minutes of the movie makes everything that comes before it so different.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a way that I can't think of another movie that's done that. That's not The Sixth Sense or a genre movie that has that kind of big fanciful twist. That remember for a minute, like after Sixth Sense, there was like that was like the thing, and everything had to have a twist.
Right. Just like after Pulp Fiction, everything was nonlinear.
Exactly.
The same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Paul Thomas Anderson is such a great writer. Like, so it was great. It was great to see that. So who else is Best Actress? Should we move on to Best Actor?
Well, unless there's Hawkins, McDormand, Robbie,
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep. What is she doing there?
Yeah, I mean especially given Vicky Creeps.
Yeah. And I really do think, I mean, like, there are Spielberg movies I like. I was excited to see The Post. I pointed it out. Besides The Color Purple, this is the only movie he's ever made with a female protagonist.
Yeah.
And even with that, it feels like he could not bring himself to be interested in her.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about that before, but something is always... I'm not a Spielberg, like, devotee. I love some of his early work.
Yeah.
Obviously, Brian's wearing a Jurassic Park t-shirt right now that for the people listening. But I have had such a hard time. Like, I feel like he's one of those people that, like, works too deeply in preciousness and Hollywood tropes, and he does it very well. I'll give him that.
I mean, he defined some of those tropes.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
Like, he invented them.
But those tropes are not interesting to me. So, like, I find it very hard to, like, if I felt like he was doing something new every single time, twisting something, trying something, pulling and pushing.
Well, there's a reason he didn't get nominated this year.
It'd be, I'd feel differently about that, but I think Meryl Streep sort of similarly, like, I mean, there's no disputing that she's a great actress.
Of course not.
She's got the Oscars
she's
to
not a
prove
great
it.
actress.
Yeah, she's certainly got the nominations to prove it too.
Right.
But I think you and I were talking about this before. Like, I think at this point Meryl Streep could, like, fart for 20 minutes on film and get nominated for an Oscar. Like,
that was Music of the Heart, actually. Wasn't that
Oh god! But she doesn't. I mean,
I thought it was Mamma Mia, but
that's
and there's a sequel.
and they're making a sequel.
Sequel.
How
But
much
it looks
money
like
did they?
she's dead. In the trailer, it looks like her character is dead.
I mean, that's why they hired Cher, so that she would look alive by comparison.
No, I'm saying it looks like, because you see these scenes, and I'm getting way off track, and I will make this brief. You see these scenes of the two, Christine Baranski and the other woman. I didn't see the movie, so I don't know the characters' names.
Right.
But they're her friends, they're like Meryl Streep's friends, and you see in the trailer there's scenes where she's talking to the actress that plays the daughter.
Amanda Seyfried.
Yes.
Yeah.
and they're talking about the Meryl Streep character and about what it was like when she was pregnant, and then it like flashes back to Meryl Streep's character like younger, and you see a few shots of Meryl Streep, but I definitely saw the trailer and I got the impression, I was like, I think her character's dead. And I think that's the movie. Well, that's the thing too, is that like, she's pregnant, the daughter character is pregnant, and I think that's. But it just seemed like there were.
Mamma Mia.
I guess, I don't know.
I don't feel like she's done a role worthy of her talent since Adaptation. I really think that's the last role she did that I felt like was.
Well, she won. What did she win for? The Iron Lady, right?
Yeah. Oh god.
I was a movie I did not see.
You're fine.
I didn't want to. Yeah.
You don't need to.
But it also kind of felt. I don't know who else was nominated that year, but it also felt like. I remember when she won, it was like I remember kind of feeling like given the year, I was kind of like, yeah.
It had been 30 years since her last one.
Yeah.
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 So
speaking of legacy awards,
right?
You know. And again, no one is saying that she's a bad actress.
But she did
even in bad movies.
Cool.
She did break Jodie Foster's legs. As we all found out on the Oscars.
That's true.
No,
That's
she's
true.
fantastic. She just she doesn't choose the best movies. There you go.
No, I think that she's
comfortable.
She's comfortable and she just does, yeah. And I don't think she's ever done a sequel before. So, Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again is probably her first sequel, so good for her.
Is that actually what it's called?
Oh god.
It really is.
God. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. So we did Best Actress, Best Actor.
Fun, good. To quote Liz Lemon.
Anytime we can work a Liz Lemon quote into our podcast, we should.
I'm going to be right at home.
I'm more of a Leslie Note person, but
That's fine.
I love
between
them
the
both.
three of us.
Yeah. That's fine. So Best Actor, Gary Oldman won Best Actor.
To no one's surprise.
To no one's surprise. Again, it felt like they were checking off a box. They were like, let's give Gary Oldman his Oscar.
Especially because they've gotten so much shit over the years of like, well, if you you can't take the Oscar seriously, they never nominate Gary Oldman.
Right.
Like, that's
right.
what, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't realize his only other Oscar nomination was for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So it was really recent.
Yeah.
It's very recent.
Because basically people kind of were like, oh, he doesn't have one, does he?
Yeah.
He should have gotten one for Sid and Nancy. He could have gotten one for The Professional. He could have gotten one for, I can't think of it.
Hell, give him a supporting one for Fifth Element.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Or
I'm
JFK.
dead serious.
Or
Yeah.
JFK. He played.
That's
So that's
right,
weird.
yeah.
He's played Winston Churchill. He's played Sid. I don't know his last
Sid
name.
Vicious.
Sid Vicious. I was going to say Sid Barrett, but that's Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
So he's played Winston Churchill, Sid Vicious, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
What a filmography! Like no one. Again,
He
it's
just disappears into his roles.
well, I would disagree with that. At least in the case of
Churchill.
of Darkest Hour, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm quoting another critic, but he was like a lot of the heavy lifting of that performance is done by the prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
And he was exactly right. I felt like I've told you this, but I don't think I've talked to you about this. There's an episode of Friends with Gary Oldman playing a Gary Oldman-like actor, not named Gary Oldman. I don't remember the character's name, but he does a movie with Joey, and the whole like joke is that he's over-emoting and spitting on Joey's face, and Joey can't deal with it. And I could not get that out of my head when I was watching him yell at people in this movie because he spits everywhere. And and it just kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. It was also, I wasn't really that engaged with the movie.
Yeah.
It was a very sort of basic biopic. It almost functions better as a prequel to Dunkirk than it does to as its own movie.
Yeah.
It's like the Dunkirk cinematic universe now, apparently. Because there is lines in Dunkirk where they're like, well, Churchill wants us to do this and that, and then like in that
it
movie,
ends with a speech by him being read by one of the characters.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting, but super coincidental, obviously. But not my favorite movie, not my favorite Gary Oldman performance. I would have loved. Who else was nominated?
So we have Denzel,
Timothy
Chalamet, Daniel Kaluuya, and Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
And
any one of those, probably other than Denzel.
I mean, did anybody see Roman J. Whatever? No, I didn't.
And I don't think that is limited to just this room. I really think nobody saw
I think
it.
nobody saw
But
it.
honestly, he should have. And I didn't love Fences, but he should have won.
Yeah, he was incredible in Fences.
He's great.
I think he's a
And
very accomplished actor.
He's great, and I wouldn't have a problem with if we can nominate Meryl Streep for Florence Foster Jenkins.
Yeah.
Florence Foster.
Why not nominate Denzel for Roman J. Esquire? Why not nominate Denzel for
Or Music of the Fart.
Yeah.
right? Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I just
That's our first like T-shirt merch, I think.
We already got it. Music of the Fart. Meryl Streep would probably be into that.
She probably would.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, for me, it's Timothée Chalamet is maybe the best performance I've seen. It was my favorite performance of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe my performance of like the last several years.
Yeah.
It just bowled
What's
me
funny about
over.
that performance for me was that when I saw the movie, and I liked him in the movie. I liked the movie a lot overall, and I thought he was good in it. But then I saw him in interviews and basically as himself, and then I rewatched his movie. I rewatched this movie, and I noticed what a performance it was.
Yeah.
Because I think the first time I watched it, I kind of just assumed that this was him. That he's just this overeducated, like, 22-year-old who knows all these different things about, and that may well be true, but watching him in interviews and stuff, he sounds like a 22-year-old.
Exactly.
And I'm sure he's a perfectly nice guy, but it's like, then to watch his movie again and to see kind of what he's changed and what's different is that it was fascinating to me. And it made me respect that performance even more. And it made me respect that movie even more. And I already loved the movie and loved the performance. So now I'm with you. It's probably one of the best of the year.
Yeah.
I was rooting for Daniel Kaluuya because I love that movie. I would have been happy with either of those two, Daniel Day-Lewis winning. I think Roman J. Esquire was the only one I didn't see, and probably the only one I was really like the one I was actively voting against or rooting against was the one that won.
I feel like that's what everybody I knew felt, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely felt like, for me, it was between, as you said, Daniel Kaluuya and Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
Would you say, based on your observations of his interviews, do you think Timothée Chalamet is more like his character in Lady Bird?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is I actually saw Lady Bird before I saw Call Me by
I
Your
did
Name.
too.
Yeah.
So I was like, and he's just
Yeah.
and he's supposed to be, he's so fucking irritating in that
he's
movie.
such a tool.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes, he's supposed to be. And so
Yeah.
like when I saw that, I knew that it was like, oh, he's got range.
Yeah. See, I hadn't seen that. I didn't see Lady Bird until after I saw Call Me by Your Name.
Right. And I know we're all sick of Daniel Day-Lewis. I know he has 3 Oscars, but like if anybody deserves a 4th,
right,
I would have been fine with him winning.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing. I know it's like
especially given it's his quote unquote last performance.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll see.
Well, yeah, I think everybody kind of says that when they talk about that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And it's
But he's so consistently great that when he gives another great performance, you're almost like, oh, and Daniel Day-Lewis, whatever. But
Right,
it's so good.
right,
Like,
and he's not a Meryl Streep where he's in a movie every year and is nominated every year.
Right.
He's in one movie every 5 years and he's phenomenal and they give him an Oscar.
And he's in better movies than she is.
And he is in better movies.
Absolutely.
But I think that's also probably just a factor of he's in fewer movies.
Sure.
I think if she were in fewer movies, maybe she would be. I mean, I don't know. I want to speak for Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
But
I also feel like he chooses roles that are distinct enough.
yeah.
And I guess you could
And he
still...
works with filmmakers a lot, like
Right.
that he worked, like he works with the people that he works with. He's done 2 movies with Paul Thomas Anderson. He did 2 with Scorsese.
He's a method actor, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could be part of it. I don't know if Meryl Streep is or not. I assume she's not. But I would say that, like you were saying, like, if he kept winning Oscars for his performances, I wouldn't be mad about it because, one, his performances are very, very good, but they're all different. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he inhabits
I mean, the
very
difference is
different
between
characters.
yeah. I'm sorry.
The
The differences between Reynolds Woodcock and Daniel Plainview are the only similarities is it's the actor. Like other than that, they could not be more different.
I feel like in many ways for me he is, and I will use any excuse that I can find to talk about my love for Cate Blanchett, but I feel like he's somebody who is like a male equivalent of her, because when
Yeah.
she falls into a role, like she becomes that role.
Mhm.
Her mannerisms really become that of the person she's portraying. Her the staccato of her voice, every element of it sort of falls into that. Even when it's Galadriel,
Right.
you know.
I think that's a perfect analogy because she is sort of, even more than Meryl Streep, she is sort of infallible.
Yeah.
Like everything she does, I've just never seen her do anything wrong, and I've never seen Daniel Day-Lewis do anything wrong. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
So actor, actress, best. We kind of touched on Sam Rockwell for supporting. Do we want to go back to supporting and talk about?
All I will
talk about how
say,
Michael-
That was a weak category.
it was a weak.
It was a weak category
Yeah.
because the guy that gave the best supporting performance in at least, definitely in one movie and solid supporting performances in 2 other movies, was Michael Stuhlbarg.
And he was incredible. That's like I loved Call Me by Your Name. The people I saw it with, like, some of them didn't connect to it because I think they were looking for something very realistic, and I'm like, this is Luca Guadagnino. He makes these like beautiful, like sumptuous, like, you know, pieces about emotion and just like being there in that moment. So that didn't bother me, but for everyone that I saw it with, even the ones that didn't connect to it, that conversation scene towards the end of the film is just like shattering.
Well, if you've ever been in love, you can't not relate to what he says.
Well, and if you've ever come out, like that expression of like, I am afraid, especially since the movie takes place in the 80s, even though it's sort of like this oddly accepting 80s.
Yeah.
Well, it's an oddly accepting family.
Right.
Yes.
They're really the only like people that you see, because his
Well, even
girlfriend kind of is like.
Right.
Well, but she takes him in at the end.
Wait, what were you gonna say?
Well, just like that performance is really good. The thing about the category overall that, like, I've said to Brian and I've said to like anybody who will listen to me, is it is really, like, you know, for Oscars talking about all its diversity initiatives, it is really fucking time to stop rewarding performances of white people being quote-unquote brave for being awful racist monsters.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not brave, and I will say this as people on the other side probably don't know this because they don't see me, but as a Latinx person, like, being, like, portraying a racist person as a white person isn't brave because that is the legacy, right? You know, like, people of color have to deal with very different legacies that we all have to crawl out from underneath whenever anyone has expectations of us.
Right.
But, like, this is the legacy on the other side, and it's not that it's not a difficult performance, and it's not that, like, if I'm not a racist person, like, that I have to put myself through that, but, like, we need to stop rewarding that, like, especially when it's a cop.
Yeah. It was a very problematic movie for a lot of reasons. It just, oh God, I don't even know where to begin with that movie. I really don't, because it's like, we could do an entire, like, episode about just that movie, and nobody wants that, quite frankly.
No.
We're all kind of tired of that movie. It's a good performance, but it's not his best performance, and it certainly wasn't the best supporting performance of the year. One of the biggest issues that I had with that movie is there is somehow he's redeemed by this coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is one of the more sort of like glaring things, because it's like Martin McDonagh like wants us to kind of think like, oh, he's a changed person or whatever, and like all of that, but it's like,
But he's not.
He's not really, and he's getting in a car to go kill somebody. Yeah. And I guess Kyle hasn't seen it, so spoiler alert.
I've not seen it. Yeah. I'm fine.
You don't need to see it, but they just lean too much on people of color as plot devices, without giving them point of view or a perspective or even a voice in that movie. So it's very much, the honest trailers for the Oscars summed it up, but it was like 3 racists inside Missouri. That's what the movie's about. And like, I guess Frances McDormand is probably the least racist of those characters. Mm-hmm. She doesn't outwardly call anybody any untoward names, but...
Well, but she makes fun of a person who's dwarf.
Right, and that's the other thing. What is Peter Dinklage doing in this movie if not to be... the little person jokes.
And he's absolutely used that way. That McSweeney's article you sent me, the like 17 other billboards.
Yeah. I think
which all call out the problems of the film, was absolutely on point.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to Call Me By Your Name, though, because I wanted to know if you guys... I kind of know where everybody stands on it, but do we want to discuss the biggest controversy about Call Me By Your Name, which was the age difference? Or is that kind of a non-issue as far as we're all concerned?
Well, it's a non-issue for me. It's an issue for a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, like, a point that's been made a lot that I think is true is that maybe, I don't want to say it's miscast, because I think Armie Hammer is great.
Yeah.
I think Timothée Chalamet is fantastic, obviously. Yeah. But, yeah, Armie Hammer reads as 30, if not older.
I think he is 30, and he looks like he's 35, 36.
And just like 20, and you just can't buy him as 24. And no matter how many articles you read that says the character is 24, and nobody's going to believe that.
Yeah, yeah.
They
don't even really say that in the movie that I can remember.
I don't even remember them mentioning his name, just that he's a graduate student.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it wasn't that big of an issue. I feel like a lot of people at 17 are in relationships, and they're in love with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of, yes, America is very puritanical, and the legal age limit for most of the country is 18. And in some states it's 16 or 17. In some countries it's 16 or 17.
Including Italy, for the record.
Including Italy. But it's also, the thing to me is that that's not what this movie is about.
No.
And it's weird for me. This was kind of the biggest point. This is actually the point that I wanted to make about this movie specifically, like, for the podcast, is that at no point in the movie does Elio feel he's been victimized or raped or traumatized. No. He's traumatized in the sense that he has a broken heart, but it's not a trauma that it's a very common thing that we've all had. And I wouldn't even say it's traumatized. He's just saddened. He has his heart broken.
He also...
So it feels weird... Oh, go ahead.
I would say he also 90% initiates.
Yeah, absolutely. The movie does a very good job, too, of... They skirt around it so much, both characters, and they really do. And Oliver backs away. Like, he takes his time and kind of like, and you're right, it is. Elio kind of like instigates it and puts it in motion.
I mean, the movie makes you wait at least an hour before they even acknowledge.
And that's the other thing. The other thing is that, like, so on the one hand, I feel like we in 2018 are telling this character, this 17-year-old character in 1983, like, you've been raped. You were statutory raped. And I think even in 1983, he would have said, no, I wasn't. I knew what I was getting myself into and all of that. And the other point that I wanted to make...
I don't know how you could watch that last scene and think that that's somebody who...
was traumatized.
Had anything happened to him that he didn't want to happen.
Oh, so the other point that I wanted to make, though, was that...
That's a horrible way to phrase that.
That's what it is. I feel like the movie it's very much Elio's movie.
Yeah.
It is about Elio. He's the main character. He's in most of the scenes. He's in almost every shot.
I believe he's in every scene.
Yeah. So this was one of the things that struck me on the rewatch when I was watching it last week, is that if you follow the movie, you can fall in love with Oliver right alongside Elio. Totally. Like, it lets you kind of... and that scene where he's like... There's so many, like, random awkward scenes where... The scene I keep thinking about is, like, when he starts masturbating and then he walks in. And then there's that whole thing where he's like, oh, let's go down swimming. And he's like, can I meet you down there?
Yeah.
And there's, like, weird little things like that. Like, it's his story, it's his movie. He's the one that's kind of initiating everything. Well, and like I said, if you let the movie, like, if you let the movie, you will fall in love with Oliver as well.
Can I ask you guys both a personal question?
Sure, absolutely.
When did you guys lose your virginity?
I was 17.
I was also 17.
Yeah.
I was not 17. But I have more than made up for it. I was 20.
This is no shaming. This is no virginity shaming. You can be 70 and virgins. And
I will say for the record, I wish it had been later.
Yeah.
I honestly do. I wish that I had waited till college.
Yeah, I did wait till college, and I've made up for it since. But no, I grew up in a small town. I don't want to get into too many personal details. Certainly not like on the first episode. But I grew up in a small town. I only knew one or two other gay people that were in my age group, and even though I knew they were gay, we didn't really ever talk about it. I wasn't out to anybody until I went to college. I was kind of I was a fat kid. So growing up, by the time I was attractive enough and skinny enough, that I wasn't a fat kid anymore. I'd hit puberty and I had a growth spurt, and I was taller and skinnier. By then, I hit puberty, and I'm like, no, I'm gay. So, like, even having, having a girlfriend is a 160-pound, like, 6th grader is not an option. Yeah. And then by the time I was older and thinned out and everything, I had realized that I was gay and I didn't want a girlfriend. So it was like, so I never did any of that stuff. And I literally, it was a very good friend of mine, much like Elio, lost her virginity to somebody, and he was a total shit, and it just shattered her. And I just was like, that's not going to be me. And I literally, I just decided I was going to go and, lose my virginity. So I did.
Well, so the reason I asked this question, and all bodies are beautiful, by the way. I was also a really chubby kid growing up. So the first time I had, my first boyfriend when I was 17, I also grew up in a very small town. And honestly, I came out sort of before I was ready to as a political maneuver, because there were some really violent things happening in my high school, and I felt like if I come out now, everyone, and anything happens to me, everyone in the town will know why.
Sure.
Right? So I felt like I had this sort of immunity, in a sense. But then I started dating somebody, and he was in college, and I was 17, and he was probably 22 or 23 when I was 17. So I think the reason I really asked this question is that when I watched the film, I don't personally regret having lost my virginity at that age and having started to experience some of those things around that age. But I think we can all understand the intensity of that emotion as a young person. I don't think, the film is not really so much about the sexual aspect.
No, you never even see them have sex.
You never
only see the aftermath.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not gratuitous, but it's so much about that sort of emotional, the joy, the frustration, the pent up, the hope that you have there. Yeah. And as a young queer kid trying to figure your shit out, I remember having these experiences with older guys, and most of them never panned out, ever.
I actually think the better question than when did you lose your virginity would have been when did you first fall in love? Yeah. And mine was when I was 21 and he was 31.
Yeah.
And that sort of felt like a second losing of my virginity. It felt like when I had sex with him, it sort of felt like the first time I was having sex. And I was completely in love with him. And, I knew intellectually, I knew it was never going to work out. But yes, I still had that, maybe. And so, it was just, especially that last scene where he's staring into the fireplace, it was just almost too relatable for me to even watch, Yeah. I recognize that so much.
Yeah, I think, like you said, though, it's anybody who's ever been in love, can relate to that. Certainly anyone who's ever been in love and, lost the person that they love, but, via breakup, or, someone who's ever been dumped.
Well, I think more of the virginity part of that for me was really just the technical aspect of, did we, as 3 queer men seeing this film, feel like...
Well, that's what...
did we feel like this person was raped or violated? And I didn't. When I was 17,
And that's what this podcast is, though. It's a queer perspective.
Yeah.
And there are queer people, I'm friends with them, who say that it's a problematic age gap.
Oh, yeah. Some of the people I saw the film with felt exactly that way. They're like, when I was 17, I lost my virginity, and I didn't feel like I had any choice. And they were describing an experience to me, which I won't relate at all, but... I was like, yeah, you didn't have any choice in that.
Right, but Elio does.
Yeah, he does, and he pursues it, and for me, I felt like I went that way. I did the things I wanted to do because I wanted to do them.
Yeah. And Elio, the character kind of lives in that kind of accepting kind of family where he has he's obviously super self-confident. He but I feel like we've kind of talked about this movie quite a bit.
We have. Okay, so we do have one more acting category left, which for me is the most heartbreaking, the thing that I was the saddest about last night, which was supporting actress. For the record, I am a huge Allison Janney fan. Yeah. I was obsessed with The West Wing. Yeah. If anything, she should have more Emmys for playing C.J. Craig. When I first heard, before I had seen I, Tonya, when I heard that the front runner for the award was Allison Janney, I couldn't have been more exciting.
Yeah.
And it is a flawless performance. But it's a performance she could do asleep, drugged with one hand behind her back. It is such a one-dimensional character, and I've already said my favorite film of the year is Lady Bird, and the best thing about Lady Bird is Laurie Metcalf.
Absolutely.
And it's just, especially since those are two problematic mothers, putting those performances side by side, I just don't know how Allison Janney is the better performance, how it's the better character. And to me, it sort of feels like this is, I don't want to repeat a conservative talking point about Hollywood being out of touch with America. And I know anecdotal evidence is not evidence, but I don't know a single person, and I know so many people who have seen both movies, I don't know a single person who preferred the Allison Janney performance.
Matt, who will one day be on this podcast, preferred Allison Janney.
Okay.
I already talked to him about it, and he's been punished. You're right. I'm 100% with you. It's such a lived-in, real performance.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's a real woman.
Exactly. And I know
whereas, go ahead.
Sorry, I know I'm the millionth person who said that, but so many things she said, I was like, oh, that's my mom.
Yeah.
I've heard my mom say that exactly.
And we've talked about this, and this was something I wanted to bring up on the podcast, was I have this sort of theory that how one relates to Lady Bird and whether or not one likes Lady Bird, I think has a lot to do with your relationship with your mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and psychoanalyze anybody,
right.
But I think that's a key thing to that movie and to that performance. I think that the other problem with the Allison Janney performance is it's such it's a very good performance, and you're right, she could do it in her sleep. She plays that character every week on Mom, on CBS.
Sure.
She has an Emmy for that character.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, I said on Facebook, I was like, it's just fidgety and lighting cigarettes and eye rolls. And it's and what I said on Facebook is she's kind of just an R-rated Pam from The Office. It's just that kind of, just in the sense that most of the performance is reactive and kind of rolling her eyes and being well, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If she was going to get an Oscar for that performance, it should have been for Loretta in Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Right? Yes, exactly. And
more
smartest.
And like you said, any other year, I would be thrilled that Allison Janney was heading straight towards an Oscar, but not against Lady Bird, not against Laurie Metcalf.
You know what's a better mom performance she gives in a movie? Juno.
Yeah. Or even, it was almost the same character, but Away We Go.
I
loved her in Away We Go.
Yes, she's great in that.
It's really funny. She gives a really good performance. It's this almost an identical performance. It's this kind of over it mom kind of thing.
Sure.
I don't think the character in Away We Go hates her children as much.
She just doesn't care.
It's
just her versus Laurie Metcalf. It's just a bad mother, one character who's just a bad mother, and another character who is trying to be a good mother and failing.
Yeah, and
failing in a lot of ways.
Failing in a lot of ways, but also has this really difficult daughter to deal with.
Exactly.
And a difficult situation and a difficult job, and her husband's losing his job.
Right, all those moments where you see Laurie Metcalf at work being a nurse, you don't get an equivalent moment with Allison Janney.
Right. There's nothing that really humanizes. I don't know the character's name in Tanya.
Lavanya.
That was the other thing. It's I feel I'm always aware that it's Allison Janney.
Right.
Yeah.
Laurie Metcalf kind of just disappears. I mean, I really only know Laurie Metcalf through this and
Jackie
and Scream 2.
Yeah, Scream. Yes.
Personally, I think it's a little poetic.
I will say that I feel exceptionally lucky that. So I have a thing with my mom every year. We always she takes care of my grandmother who's been ailing for a number of years, and so she doesn't get to go out and see a lot of films, especially not sort of indie cinema, any of the art house films, right? So over Christmas, the day after Christmas, we usually go and hit up the theater, and they're always rerunning a lot of the big Oscar nominated films or the assumed Oscar nominated films. And so we'll just do a day, and we'll watch 3 or 4 or 5 films in a row, depending on what we can schedule.
Yeah.
And so we got to see Lady Bird this year, and I realize that Tracy Letts plays the father in that film, so she's not a single mom, but my mom's a single mom, and even though I wasn't a young woman, obviously in high school, the time period too, she's graduating in 2002. That's when I graduated high school.
Yeah.
it's, you know, I didn't grow up in Sacramento, obviously, but
you grew up in California, right?
No, I grew up here in the suburbs or the.
I do think that it's not just our mothers. I think the fact that we're all in our 30s and we're about that age and at that time.
I graduated in 1998. I'm a little bit older.
Okay.
But I was also really into Dave Matthews Band, and I definitely cried to that song in the car. I definitely cried to that song in the car.
The fact that movie made Crash into me like an emotional touchstone for me. Like, kudos to Greta Gerwig, because I used to hate that song so much. And
it was so well used.
It's used to such great effect. That entire, the prom montage, which is all set to that song, I was bawling my eyes out the whole time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I remember, like, going through, like, my mom was a wonderful mom. We grew up, like, fairly poor, you know, so, like, we had difficulties, right? Like, I was her only kid. She didn't know what to do with me, I think, a lot of the time. And there was always a lot of love in the house, but, like, she even said this, you know, as I was getting older in high school. She's like, well, I don't want to do what I did with my mom, because she was the first kid for my grandmother. And she's like, and we just, like, fought and fought and fought, and we were, that whole last year before I went away, before I graduated high school, we just kind of hated each other. Yeah. And I think, you know, my mom was a psychiatric nurse, so she thinks a lot about, you know, sort of the psychology behind a lot of things. But, you know, she said, I don't want to do that with you, because I think for us it was, we hated each other so much that it was okay for me to go.
Right.
And she's like, I don't want to do that with you. And even though we both knew that, we fought and fought. And it was almost a relief for me to move away. And right at the end, we fortunately kind of, like, repaired some of those things. And I feel very fortunate for that. But, like, that moment where she's at the airport and she doesn't go in, and then she circles back around, and I was, like, sobbing.
Give her the Oscar.
I know. It was incredible. It was so good.
Yeah. It's
just for that scene, or as I said on Facebook, that just the look that she gave when she's like, what if this is the best version of myself?
Yeah.
And she just kind of, like, tilts her head a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just kills you, because it's like, because it kills Lady Bird, because it's just like...
Right. And it's a performance of, like, little moments. It's the scene where she's ignoring her when she's doing the dishes. And so Sharon's just saying, I'm sorry, I know I'm a terrible daughter. Please just look at me. And she won't. Or the scene towards the beginning of the movie where she says, you know, Saoirse Ronan says something like, oh, would you have done this with your mother? And she just goes, my mother was an abusive alcoholic, and walks out of the room. Yeah. Like, it just... it kills me.
It was a great movie. That it left empty-handed last night was very disappointing.
It was very sad.
But it, like I said, it was such a checkbox Oscars that it's almost not surprising.
No.
Which even makes it even more depressing, kind of. But overall, it was kind of a bum year. I don't know. I feel like we're at like 52 minutes. I don't know if do we want to go over like Dunkirk and.
I love Dunkirk.
In
any other year.
But I feel like we talked about Darkest Hour. We talked about
what have we not talked about?
The thing else,
I mean, like the Florida Project, but none of us have seen it.
We haven't seen it yet. Dunkirk. I'll just say really quickly, is a lot of people like hated it, but I think those are the same people who hate Christopher Nolan.
Well, I'm not a huge Christopher Nolan fan. This is the first Nolan movie I've ever loved, and I loved it. Like, I think I was rooting for him for Best Director. That
would have been... We didn't really talk about... I guess we kind of briefly touched on The Shape of Water, but we spent so much time on Lady Bird and Call Me by Your Name that it feels like... but The Shape of Water... Yeah, Dunkirk would have been a great Best Director.
I thought
it got a lot of the technical awards. I thought it is my favorite Nolan movie.
Yeah.
For sure.
I thought it was the most respectful war film I've ever seen. Like, people talk about Saving Private Ryan and, like, oh, how gritty war is, but, like, so much of what you see on screen with a typical war film is carnage.
Yeah.
That it almost becomes sort of not really about making you feel like you're there.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the emotion. It's about, like, the violence and the blood and the carnage.
Yeah.
And this film, like, there is violence, but you don't see most of it.
Right.
You're not, like, inundated with blood and guts everywhere.
Right.
It is about that moment of, like, fear and horror, like, whether you're in it or you're waiting for it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that is most effective about the movie is that you never see a German.
Yeah.
They're always off screen, so they're just it makes them it's almost like a horror movie in that there's this
Yeah.
boogeyman off screen that you never see, and like that scene where they're all in the boat and the bullet holes, the bullets are coming faster and faster. That scene is fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
I watched
Yeah.
that movie. I missed it in the theater, which is one of my great regrets
Mine
in
too.
2017.
Yeah.
I missed it in the theater, but I jumped off my couch when that dark scene and then the bullet.
It's terrifying.
It scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And because I didn't see it coming.
Well, when you
it
have
is-
all the oil on the water too, and you know
Yeah.
that plane is going to crash and the fire's going to start,
Yeah.
and you're just like, Jesus Christ, these people
Yeah.
are going to burn.
I
to
feel
death.
like it's peak. To me, it's peak Nolan. It's everything that Nolan does well, streamlined and cut down into a 90-minute movie. I know a lot of people. That guy Justin that I work with he didn't like the movie because he didn't feel like there was a lot of like much characterization for the characters. And
Well-
my counter argument to that was like, well, no, you don't need that. Like it's the whole point of the movie is like get them off the island.
Right.
That's it.
All the
That's
characters are-
everybody's arc.
Yeah.
Everybody has the same arc
Right.
with rescue these soldiers. So there's you don't need like the I'm gonna look at the picture of my wife back home.
Right.
Like
Right.
none of that matters.
Right.
Because he's on the plane, he's got a mission to do, and he's gonna go do that mission. And like or he's on the boat and it's like it's Kenneth Branagh, he's gotta like figure out what to do and like that's everybody's arc. That's every character has that they're just it's in the and I don't want to compare the two movies because they're not really similar other than they both have Tom Hardy. But that was kind of my point. I had made that point with Fury Road.
Mm.
Fury Road is just all momentum.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
all just like go, go, go.
Yeah.
And like you got Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy as basically your only two characters, and then I remember the villain's name.
And Morton Joe.
Morton Joe, yeah. And like that's it. And it's the same kind of thing where it's like sometimes a movie that deals in archetypes doesn't need those deeper characters. And I
No.
say that as someone who considers myself like a writer who loves like character written
Me
stuff.
too, yeah.
Character driven like Lady Bird, for example.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the ultimate character driven movie. Call Me by Your Name character driven movie. But
Yeah.
like
I mean,
sometimes in a movie like Dunkirk or even Mad Max, like those archetypes
All you need is archetypes.
it's just keep moving forward. Like get
Yeah.
to the thing.
well, that's why like Drive, for example,
Drive.
that's why
Totally,
that
yeah.
worked well. Like you don't know who any of these characters are, and in the end, it doesn't actually.
And they don't
matter.
know who any like the
Yeah.
married couple knows, but
Yeah.
like they don't know anything about him. He doesn't know anything about them.
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of know who Albert Brooks is.
Yeah,
In that,
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
you don't. You
Yeah.
don't really know who Carey Mulligan is.
No,
and,
yeah,
like,
no,
the-
yeah.
and like you don't really know what the point is of the movie by the end because there kind of is no point. But it's about the
Well,
experience of the journey, you
And it's
know?
the style. I think
It's the style, yeah.
The point is the style, but
Yeah,
in a good way, not in a like.
not with Neon Demon or whatever.
Right.
Or
right.
oh, what was that terrible one that he made after that?
Only God Forgives. Was that
Yeah.
him?
Yeah, only yeah.
Oh,
Only
Refn? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, I think the movie was terrible. But anyway.
Yeah. So that's Dunkirk. The Post. I think we kind of discussed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think overall, I think we can all agree it was a pretty sort of meh
Nah.
kind of Oscars. Again,
We didn't really discuss Get Out very much.
Oh, we can talk
I
about
would
Get
say.
Out.
I mean, I do have to leave very shortly, but
Okay. Well, let's knock out Get
Yeah,
Out
let's
real
do
quick,
Get Out.
and then we can kind of.
I mean, it's your favorite movie of the year.
It was my favorite movie of the year. Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was, and I've told you this 1,000 times. I could have easily have flipped Lady Bird, and I really feel like they're tied for my favorite movie, Lady Bird and Get Out, for different reasons. I'm a horror movie fan. It was one of the best horror movies I'd seen in a long time. I remember I saw that movie at the Budget Theater, the new 400, for $5 or $6. Like I had heard good things about it, but I was like, so many horror movies are talked up so much
Right.
that I still kind of went in just being like, okay, let's see. It surprised the hell out of me. Allison Williams absolutely was great in it.
Mhm.
She should have been nominated.
She should have been
She
nominated.
should have been on.
Yeah.
I think she should have been nominated. And she should have lost to Laurie Metcalf. But she should have been
Yeah,
nominated.
totally. But I mean, the like one of the most impressive like single moments of acting I saw on screen this year is the scene of her towards the end on the phone
Yeah.
with the TSA.
I like when she's
where-
holding the keys. And he's
Oh,
just
that-
like, give me the keys.
the
just give
moment
me
where
the
she,
keys.
the moment where she,
And then she's
Yeah.
just like,
babe, you know I can't do that.
Yeah.
No, but just like the fact that she does that whole well, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue, but on the phone, and she manages to keep that dead face the whole time while
Yeah.
doing that voice.
Yeah.
Is so
Yeah,
impressive.
and I was not a fan of Girls.
No, I hated her on Girls.
I wasn't a fan of the show. I didn't.
Yeah,
I knew
me
that she
either.
was on it, but I
Yeah.
didn't. So like seeing her in it, I was like, oh, it's one of the girls from
Okay,
Girls. I still have the same feeling about Adam Driver when he's in a movie. I'm like, oh, it's Adam Driver.
Yeah.
I thought it was the best movie of the year. Like I said, it's pretty much tied with Lady Bird, but for such vastly different reasons. You might be right that that Jordan Peele may have like blown his wad on his first movie.
Well, I should say this. I'm concerned with both Jordan Peele and Greta Gerwig that they both directed their first movie, and they're both so intensely personal to their own experiences.
Yeah.
I wonder if they can ever make another movie that good.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
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 And also, like, of the time,
Yes.
I think
totally.
Get Out like would not have worked like 10 years ago.
It's the right movie at the right time.
It would have
Yeah.
ended up being like a B.
Yeah.
Kind of. You know.
Yeah. It was obviously it was a very timely movie. I mean, it came out less than a month after Trump was inaugurated, and you have one of the characters saying like, I would have voted for Barack Obama a third
The
time.
third term.
I do think it is pretty richly ironic that I feel like the demographic who likes the movie the most is the demographic that it is satirizing.
Yeah.
Because like it would have been and one of the things that is so impressive about it is that it would have been so easy to satirize white conservatives.
Yeah.
The fact that he chooses to satirize white progressives,
Yeah.
I think is what I find most impressive about that
Right.
movie. And it's also the people who are the most, I feel like that movie the most.
Yeah.
Are the people that it's jabbing.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually that's a good point.
Shots fired, Brian.
I like it. I like the
liberal.
movie very much.
I know.
I do. I had a problem with it. Obviously, I really wanted Lady Bird to win Best Screenplay. I'm happy for Jordan Peele. But honestly, the screenplay for me was sort of one of the weaker aspects of the movie, just because I know it's gotten a lot of praise for being a genre mashup, and I think that's cool. I think it would have worked better for me, and it would have even been both funnier and scarier if it had just like kept a straight face the whole time. Every time it goes back to the TSA agent,
Rodney was good.
is that
Well, I
it
love him
loses.
so much.
That's a
though.
good performance.
He's so funny.
He's funny,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I feel like it's a disservice to the movie because I know I'm a broken record on this. I just feel like I'm in a Judd Apatow movie all of a sudden, and I wish that especially that scene in the police station.
That's the one scene that even I've seen the movie now probably 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe like 5 or 6. Anyway, that is the one scene that's still kind of like.
It's a really Apatow-y scene.
It's not only that, but I feel like wouldn't one of them just be like, you know what? Let's just investigate.
Right,
Let's just
totally.
drive over there,
Right.
and like, let's see what this is about.
Yeah.
And the way they kind of all just are like, meh, you're crazy. That's the one thing about the movie that I would change if I could. Everything else though, but like I said, I'm glad.
I was gonna say those scenes actually reminded me of Scream.
Huh.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, the way that Wes Craven, like, jumps in there and, like, does these, like, real goofy, like, we're gonna joke, this is cutting the tension of, like,
Right.
the fact that one of you is a slasher, you know,
Right.
in
Yeah.
this very room.
Right.
Yeah.
I just sort of wish it hadn't shown its hand so much. That's my problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it's an excellent movie. I thought the pacing in that movie was
Yeah.
really good.
Yes.
And the editing, and, like, the scene... And, like, you guys are talking about these other, like, I mean, technically very, very, very good acting scenes where she's, like, you know, showing her transformation a little bit, or
Right.
this, like, horror of being, like, this dual personality. But I love the scene when the camera just pans up in the house and she's sitting on her bed with her headphones in and, like, all in this, like, white, like, very, like, American Psycho,
That's a
like,
great
blonde hair
It's
pulled
a great
back.
shot. Yeah.
It's an incredible shot, and she's just like in there, and she's looking up like famous NBA stars.
Yeah.
What is she listening to? Time of My Life? What is she listening to?
I can't remember.
I
what
think
she's
it's Time of
listening
My Life. But anyway.
to. And like the house is on fire, and he's getting out, and you're just like, just get in that car and go, you know.
Yeah, it was a great movie. It was definitely a movie of its time. I'm disappointed it didn't win. But again, I'm not mad that Shape of Water won.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Del Toro is a very good filmmaker. I keep thinking about Tom Hooper. Like, at least he has a
Oof.
vision. At least he has like a unique style. You can look at one of his movies and you know who directed it. He deserves a Best Director Oscar.
Yes, absolutely.
It was such a great year, though. Yeah. It was such an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, it was an amazing year.
It's hard. Like I said, I think in another year I think in another year I probably would have been rooting for The Shape of Water. It might have been my favorite of the year.
The thing that I thought was really interesting, this is just like super fast, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Susanna Paulo, who writes for Polygon, did a really interesting write-up that was published. She must have written it, obviously, before the Oscars. It was published like 5 minutes after the Best Picture was announced. But she was saying, like, you know, sort of like in defense of like why this is the film that should have won this year. Mm-hmm. And she's like, there's a lot of other films that talk about race or gender difference or things like that, or it's people overcoming adversity. And in most of these movies, there's a significant amount of pain that happens there. And like, it's not focusing on the beauty of like relationships of people who are different. And Shape of Water is all about people who are different coming together.
It is true. Like the most optimistic of.
It is. Yeah, it's a really beautiful, like, lovely film.
That's true.
It is.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah, it is lovely.
Yeah, it is. Like I can't even really be mad because I did like it a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think I liked it as much as I liked everything else. Yeah. I don't even like. I've even said this before, but I already own like 4 of the Best Picture nominees, which I can't remember the last time that happened. Probably 1999.
Yeah.
And I will. They're just not on disc.
Right.
I still collect Blu-rays.
I've moved past Blu-rays at this point. Part of it is because I live in such a small studio. But so we should wrap up. We're gonna wrap this up. I think next week we're gonna focus more solely on one movie, possibly pairing it up with another movie.
Sure.
That has either of those have yet to be determined. Mm-hmm. But yeah, thanks for listening to our first episode, and I hope you had as much fun listening as we did recording.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I know that
super fun.
Very fun.
I looked at the thing and I'm like, we're at an hour and it doesn't feel like it. So
no,
that's
not
great.
at all.
So that's great. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.